feel together. We leave a sizzle in the air. I'm not afraid about the future. I close my eyes and I am there.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Femme Power on WISP Sports Radio, where we believe that women in sports deserve equal coverage.
I'm holding on. I know you treat love like fast cars, burn through hearts like NASCAR. But this is the best part.
Femme Power is a podcast where we talk to women and girls in swimming and sports who inspire us.
If only for the night. If only for the night. We'll be touching base. We'll light up the sky. If only for the night.
So today we actually have a very special guest on our podcast, and for those of you that are listening that are really into swimming and women empowerment, you will be so excited to hear from our wonderful guest. Her name is Cheryl Preheim. And if you don't know her, if you're wondering how Cheryl fits into our Femme Power podcast, you will find out how she fits into swimming in a little bit. But Cheryl is one of the most respected journalists in the game. She is a reporter and anchor at 11 Alive in Atlanta. Gosh, Cheryl, I almost said 9 News. And I've known Cheryl for almost 7 years now.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, so welcome, Cheryl Preheim.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you.
Well, we are so excited to have you here. I have to say, I live in the Atlanta area, so I didn't know you before, but I'm so glad to know you now. But it's just been so awesome. My mom is a huge fan of yours, and
Aww.
I am now a big fan of yours. But to get started, what I would love to do is kind of hear your story and how you got to where you are in your career.
I would say it was all a fluke, actually. I think I was
I think that's humble.
Yes, it's true though. I think a lot of young women who feel like there's lots of things that energize us and feel passionate, but sometimes we're wondering what is the specific direction and how are we going to make all the things that we feel passionate about into a career that we feel like is bigger than just a job where you punch the clock, but maybe a purpose. And that was what was in my heart. But in college, I just didn't know how the dots were going to connect. And I was on my way to doing the Teach Across America program. I was going to do that because I wasn't sure how to use this love of writing I had and a love of people. And I actually enjoyed public speaking. And how was I going to make that into something? And a friend in college said, you should intern at the local NBC station until you sort of decide what you're going to do after college. And I did. And when I walked in that door, I knew that was something that I wanted to be a part of because I saw that a newsroom in its purest sense should be a service to the community. And it should be a place where stories are told that impact people's lives, either for safety or inspiration or knowledge or critical thinking. And I thought that's what I wanted to be a part of. So that's what happened. I was an intern there, and I used to sneak in late at night with my little ID badge, and I would rewrite scripts and learn to edit. And I got pulled aside by my supervisor one time, and I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble. They found out I've been coming in late at night. And he said, yes, I know you've been coming in late at night. But because of that, I know you work hard, and I want to be a reference for you for a job at a local radio station. And I was yet to graduate college. And so I started my first job at a radio station in Denver because of that. And then I would pick up extra opportunities when I could. And I worked at a little public access TV station when someone went on maternity leave just to help her out. And the news director from Channel 9 saw that, and she called me one day at the radio station and said, hey, why don't you come and do that story for us today? And I thought, oh my gosh, thank goodness I didn't wear a baseball hat. because usually I'd just be in a baseball hat doing my reporting for the radio. And that was the start of it, because starting that day, I started working both jobs. I'd do the radio station from about 2 a.m. till 10 a.m, and then I'd go to the TV stations from 10 to 5. And I did that for a couple of years until I fell asleep at the wheel and I had a scare and said, I'm going to have to make a decision. And I started full-time at the TV station, and that was 19 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to point out that it all began with your boss noticing that you work hard. And then suddenly it's I want to give you a reference for that. When I work with athletes, one of the things that always stands out to me is they think that working hard is normal because they are around other athletes that work hard. So it becomes this norm. And I felt the same way too. And when I got out of college and got my first job, I stood out like a sore thumb because I worked really hard, and I just thought that was normal. And people were like, wow, you work hard. And I'm like, I'm just doing my job. I didn't think it was, but I think that so many athletes out there listening, they forget that what they're doing, the hard work, it's not normal. No. And it's actually pretty extraordinary.
And it will lay a foundation for everything they do after this, because one thing I respect so greatly about athletes and the women out there who push themselves in athletics is because they're pushing themselves not just because a coach is telling them to. There's something inside of them that is driving to do their best, whatever that might be. And that is something that will serve them every day of the rest of their lives in anything that they do.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So I have to ask you, because you have been to several Olympics. How many Olympics have you been to?
Is it four? Four, yes.
Four. Okay. So how did that come about? How did you become, really, you're one of the top reporters, to cover the Olympics. How did that come about?
I might have to answer it the same way. That was also a fluke. and I laugh about a fluke, but I also think sometimes when you just step one foot in front of the other towards what you feel like is in your heart to do, opportunities come. And not necessarily because you are hunting them down. You're just doing what's in your heart to do and working hard, and then things can happen. And that's how the Olympics happened for me. And it really was connected to Missy Franklin. I met Missy Franklin's father at a charity event. I loved being involved in nonprofit work and charity and making a difference in the community. And so did he. And we connected and we were talking. And at the time, I think Missy was probably right around 11, maybe turning 12 years old. And he was telling me about his daughter and this heart she had. And I'm 5'11", almost 6 feet barefoot. And he said, oh, my daughter's going to be tall like you. And I said, well, that was awkward in middle school. And we laughed and he just said, oh gosh, she's, I think she would just love so much seeing what you do. And I said, well, let's all get together. So we all have dinner and connect, and it's so much fun. And she ends up staying with me and shadowing me for a day of work. And that's where this friendship really began. And it was a friendship between her parents and myself, and Misty and myself, and then my kids. They were just having my kids at that point. I have 4 now. And it was a friendship that started
Side note.
in that sidebar, that started then. And then, and of course, then as a friend, I was so interested in what she loved to do, and I knew she was swimming, but it was before her big breakout. And so I continued following her career, and leading up to London, I was so excited for her and seeing, how much joy she had and excitement. And when my station talked about who was going to cover the Olympics, they had talked to me briefly because I loved telling stories and profiling. I love sports. I was an athlete. I loved being involved in sports, and they knew that. And I said to them, listen, I would love to cover London for you, but I have to tell you something. If I go, I need you to know, like, Missy Franklin, first and foremost, is like near and dear to my heart. and so is her family.
You'd known her for 6 years by then?
Yeah.
You guys were close friends, and you knew her before Missy Franklin, the swimmer, before anybody knew her as that.
Absolutely. I knew her as Missy Franklin, who was shooting hoops on a plastic Little Tykes basketball hoop with my 2-year-old in the living room.
I love that.
And really the truth is that's no different than the Missy Franklin that people see on the deck, on the pool deck. And, but it was special to know and love her and her family, before all the medals and success, because what I got to see was that she never changed and her heart never changed. But that's really how London happened. And it was such a joy for me to cover the Olympics for a lot of reasons, because I love sports and I love telling stories and I love good news. And it was like the intersection of all those things. I love hard work. I love inspiration. And that does not always come with a first place finish. It's in the process. It's in the love of the journey. It's in the day-to-day stuff. And I loved telling people the story of everything that came about to make a moment happen, where there even would be a jacket that said Team USA. And that's really the win, ever long before there's a competition. And it was something I knew I didn't know that I needed to do. But once I got there, I said, this is my lane. Like, this is a lane I'm supposed to swim in. And it's been a real blessing in my life to be an Olympic reporter.
Would you say that you come from a place of yes? Because to me, it sounds like you've constantly, put one foot in front of the other. You've put in a lot of hard work, but all of a sudden you find yourself literally on the Olympic stage covering the top athlete of that games. It sounds like, you said yes at the right times, or maybe you just naturally come from a place of yes.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because I hadn't thought about this in a long time. And I just remembered I was walking down the hall with my boss and a mentor of mine, Patty Dennis. And she was saying, Cheryl, if you go to London, I need you to do something. Are you willing to take on a challenge? And I said, yes. What is it? And she said, I need you to be able to shoot your own video and edit your own stories. Now, at the time, I was a reporter and anchor that worked with another photographer. This is not something I had done, nor would I say I'm a technologically advanced person.
Hey, we got the Wi-Fi going today.
Let me write the words. Yes, I mean, this is a minor miracle, but I'd say I would love to creatively craft the words and then someone else please punch the buttons, because that's not my strength. But I didn't want that. I just knew I didn't want to put those limits on myself. I thought this is an opportunity for me to push through a fear that I've had and something I've let define me. I'm not the technology person. Who said that? What voice is telling me that, And I just said to her, I will learn. And that was 5 months before I was going to get on an airplane to go. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Right. So I start learning. And there are times I was in tears. I went to go spend a day with one of our track stars, Jenny Simpson. Bronze medalist. She's an amazing woman and one of the most positive people you'll ever meet. And I met her. She was so lovely. And we spent the day. And then I go home and I look at the video. It all looks pink. And I start crying. And I think, I cannot do this. I'm not good at this. I've just wasted her time. I'm so embarrassed. What am I going to do? I'm leaving in 3 months to go to London. And I just thought, I'm sure she's had a day like this too. And I just called her and I just had to humble myself and say, Jenny, I'm learning and I'm so sorry. And could we meet again? And she was so gracious and lovely. And we did. And it was a turning point for me, because it was really, I learned more from what I felt was such a failure that day, not just because I'll never forget which buttons to push again, because it was like seared in my mind, but also just about being human and saying, I am going to have bad days and I'm going to make mistakes and I cannot live under the pressure of being perfect. And I'm just going to have to say to someone, I'm sorry, and I'm going to try again the next time. And it's not the end of the world. And something about that took some pressure off me to move forward. And there was a time in London as I'm, carrying my camera around and editing a story. And I went with the Franklins to this beautiful castle in Leeds. And it was this beautiful, intimate time with the three of them, finally spending some family time together after, the high of the Olympics and all that had happened. And I was in this room editing a story and I was in tears, and I sent a text back to my husband and said, conquered the beast, which was conquered my fear. And it was not an easy process, but without it, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be there and to go. And I try to remember that things you can't grow without getting uncomfortable.
So much brilliance in what you just said. And while you were talking, I had to write down, you are willing to fail. And I think, we as women, we're not great risk takers because we do have to be perfect, and if we fail, we're not perfect. So we won't risk it. And look what happens when we are willing to risk failure and go for it. Look what happens when we admit, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me with this? I mean, there's so many life lessons right there in that story. I love it.
And I'm still learning, and I think part of it is embracing that I'm still learning instead of feeling badly about that, feeling so happy about that, because I hope I never stop learning. And a shift in my mindset has helped me in that, because when I feel like I'm supposed to know everything or accomplish everything, it can feel so defeating. And my daughter was learning to read, and she'd be so upset with her. And I'll say, like, Ella Grace, you're just learning to read. Why do you expect yourself to know those words already? You'll learn those words, and then you'll go to your next step. But sometimes I have been in second grade and expected myself to be a junior in high school. It's like, but it's been a process.
One of our favorite quotes actually came from our last podcast with Elizabeth Beisel. And she said something that she would remind herself every day was that you can't do everything in one day, but you can do one thing every day. And I hear a lot of the same themes here, because you can't be a junior when you're in second, and you're in second grade, and it's one foot in front of the other, but also find something on that day that you can do well or that you can improve on. And it doesn't have to be everything, but it can just be one small thing.
There's like an old saying that I love, and it's basically about process, but it's talking about how challenges bring patience. Patience brings you experience. And experience gives you hope that the next thing you face can be okay. And I repeat that in my mind a lot, depending on the process or the day, because our life is always a process. And I think even for the athletes listening, you have something in yourself to push forward and to achieve. But with that can come some pressure that can be so counterproductive. And I think a lot of people feel that in different arenas, whether it is on a track or in a pool or in a corporate office or in a home as a parent or whatever. And it is something that I've really held on to, because a challenge will come and I'll say, okay, well, this is teaching me patience. And listen, I'm going to get experience no matter what the outcome is. And I'm going to stop judging the outcome so much and just knowing there's value in the experience. Because if the outcome isn't what I wanted, I can still share that experience with someone else. Is that not valuable too? And if the outcome is what I had hoped and dreamed, then that's an experience too. But I have spent so much time in my life thinking one is a more valuable experience than the other. And as I get older, I start seeing they're equally as valuable if I judge it that way.
I love it. So let's get back to the Olympics, because that's always very exciting to talk about.
Yep.
So you've been to 4 different ones, and I know Missy, is your heart and soul. But I'm wondering, is there, and this is going to be really hard to answer, but is there kind of a memory that stands out to you, a favorite memory out of those 4 Olympics that you've been to?
Oh boy, you want just one? Can I give you a couple?
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Or maybe even the most recent, or whatever you think.
Well, I'll start with a recent one. I got back from Pyeongchang, South Korea, and a wonderful experience that I had was following Alana Myers-Taylor, who is now a 3-time Olympian and really humble and down to earth. She's a bobsledder. She had been in softball. And talk about an example of softball was her passion, and she loved that. And the year that she was hopeful to compete in the Olympics, they took softball out of the Olympics. So instead of saying, well, there went my Olympic dream, she said, I'm going to find another way. And and she started competing in bobsled. And she's a 3-time Olympic medalist in bobsled now, because she did not let that shut her down. She knew that she had a heart of a competitor, and she loves athletes, and she loves empowering women. And she was going to keep pursuing that, even if it looked like a door had slammed shut, And she she missed gold at her last Olympics by hundredths of a second. So this was supposed to be she wanted this to sort of be her redemption time. And she comes in, and the first time I see her in South Korea, she says, well, I kind of hurt my foot a little bit in training, but it's going to be fine. And she's downplaying it. And I'm wondering what's really going on. Well, I'll just condense the story. She competes. She's in first place. She and Lauren Gibbs are in first place with one more team to race. And the Germans come down, and they're almost 2/3 down the track, and Alana still looks like she's getting the gold. And then the Germans at the last second cross the line, hundredths of a second ahead of her, and she's in the same position she was in Sochi, and she was devastated in Sochi. But I watched her be so happy. I thought she is either giving an Oscar award-winning performance right now, or she is genuinely thrilled that she's got the silver medal. And she comes right down by me in the mix zone, and she gives us a hug, and I'm so happy for her. And then she's like, I got to take my shoe off. My foot is killing me. And she's like, it's so swollen, I can't even fit my shoe on. I said, oh, it's more hurt than you said. And she's like, I knew it was going to be trash when I was done with my third run, but I just need to get that third run done. And I just asked her, I said, tell me about what this moment means to you. And she said, because sometimes all you need to know is that you gave it everything you had and a little bit you didn't know you had. And that is what you leave out there. And she said, and that's what I did today. And I have a silver medal for it. And to me, that is perfect. And so it was one of my favorite moments, because it was only a few weeks later, when we were all back in the United States, that she showed a picture of her MRI, and her Achilles tendon was hanging on by a thread. She didn't have a little bit of a foot injury. She had an Achilles tendon tear that was not complete, but pretty darn close. And she competed through that and never used it once as an excuse. Did not talk about that publicly until after she was home. And to me, I think, like, women are so tough. Women are so inspiring. And I loved her story.
Oh, I love that.
Gives me chills.
Yes, I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, Cheryl, I mean, between all of the incredible women that you have covered over the last 4 Olympics, and that's 2 summer games, 2 winter games, between Elena Myers-Taylor, Missy Franklin, Michaela Schifrin, I know you just talked about how strong, how tough women are. Is there anything that you have personally learned that has, changed your outlook or, affected your decision-making or your career by working so closely with these incredibly accomplished women?
Yeah, they have really inspired me to be authentic. And that's always something I've really wanted to be and desired to be, and had hoped, even especially in the industry I'm in the broadcast industry. I think it's so important to be real, because it's not, I don't look like this without makeup. You know what I mean? I like my sweatpants and my baseball hat. And I think women have so much pressure, especially in this filtered picture Instagram society we're in, like, I don't always look like that. It's okay to say so. But one thing that, one thing I have seen in Missy and Michaela and Alana and Emma Coburn and Jenny Simpson, the women I felt such a connection with are just these authentic, genuine women who are courageous enough to talk about the hard stuff and the great stuff. Michaela now more than ever, for the first time, talking about battling anxiety. She can throw up before a race and it can really rattle her, even though she has, umpteen World Cup titles and 2 Olympics under her belt. And it's just like, that's real. That's real. And it's important for us to know that it doesn't matter the accomplishments you have, successes you might achieve. Like, these are real emotions we feel. And it is so empowering to be able to say it out loud, not just for us, but someone else needs to hear it. I've seen Missy do that with incredible courage, and I admire it so much, because I told her once, I said, more people are going to relate to the struggle than the everything goes right. Because people face hard things in all kinds of places. And that's so relatable. And it takes a lot of courage for these the elite athletes who have great expectation and pressure put on them to say, this is my hard stuff too. And I've seen that with all of these women I've listed, and it has really taught me a lot and made me look for opportunities to do that more, and seen it as an opportunity, not just like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to let someone know I'm struggling or whatever, because it goes back to, if that's part of my experience, I'm going through a challenge and I'm getting patience and experience, maybe that's going to give somebody a little bit of hope too. And something we can all relate to. And so that has taught me a lot, because in Rio, I wrote a story about Missy, and I don't know that she ever saw it, but I wrote a story about Missy better than ever. And I wrote a story about how you might think that she's not the best she's been because you're looking at the time on a clock. I'm looking at a woman who had moments that devastated her, yet she was cheering on her teammates, genuinely happy for the people around her, gracious about it, honest about how she was feeling, and determined to go back and pursue the things she loved. And to me, that's better than ever. Like, that's a champion. And I've learned so much from these women, and I'm so thankful that I fell into this opportunity of covering the Olympics and combining like storytelling and sports.
Just to pick up where we left off, you were talking about some of the strength and vulnerability that you've noticed in these amazing women that you've had the pleasure of working with.
Yeah, they're just powerful and successful and strong and incredible women. But the thing that has stood out to me most is the strength in being vulnerable and authentic and real in whatever they're facing at that moment, you know, and their willingness to share that, because there's so many of us that can learn from it and learn from their experience and the processes they go through. And that can be most inspiring of all.
Absolutely. Well, you know, something that connects the three of us, Cheryl, Kristen, myself, we all have a unique and personal relationship with Missy Franklin, who we've talked about at a couple points today. You know, she's younger than all of us, but I think stands as an inspiration to all three of us. Mm-hmm. And Missy actually leads us into the challenge that we have today for everybody.
Yes. You know, we always like to close this podcast on a challenge for the week. And, you know, when I was speaking to Missy a couple of weeks ago, she said that she had talked to you and you had given her some beautiful advice. She was kind of having, you know, a bad week. Things weren't going great. And she was just kind of down. And the advice that you gave her was, you know, to go into every day, thinking to yourself, who are you being called to love today? Mm-hmm. Who are you being called to love today? And I thought that was just so beautiful, because I think that so often, especially as athletes and as go-getters, you know, and as strong women, we're like, we're going to rule the world. And, you know, every day go in there and, you know, do something extraordinary. And, you know, at the end of the day, who are we being called to love? And so that's how I wanted to end things today, is just to challenge everybody to go into every day thinking that, who are you being called to love today? And then do your duty there.
Yeah, that has changed my life, because it's not very often that it's who I would think necessarily. But if I think with my heart and not my mind, I always know exactly who that person is that day. And it does more for me than anything.
Wow, I love it. You know, Cheryl, you have been such an amazing guest today.
Yes.
And I do want to say we're so honored that this is your first podcast.
It is. Oh my gosh.
So you were amazing.
See, something else new.
I love it.
Oh, gosh.
So we want to thank you.
guys
You've been so amazing. You've given us some awesome tidbits and things that, we can personally think about in our day to day, and things that, we can look to for inspiration. And we definitely look up to you as well. So thank you for being so amazing and being there for other women.
Oh, you guys really are incredible women. I'm just so honored to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wisp Sports Radio is the world's largest network for women's sports, available on any podcast app where there are more than 800 episodes. For more conversations from the world of women's sports, visit us at wispsports.com and follow us on social media at Wisp Sports, at Carolyn Joyce, at Coach_Kristen, and at Cheryl.Preheim. So thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another episode of Femme Power.